for May 2026. The fire alarm procedures are as follows. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices down the main staircase opposite the lifts in the foyer. Assemble in Hawley Square on the green, and officers will assist you and advise you when it's deemed safe to return to the chamber. Would everyone present please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and they are not used to make or receive phone calls while this meeting is in progress. Please note this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and subsequently broadcast on the internet. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? That's a no, and we have no members of the public, so we'll move on. I've had no members wishing to speak under 20.1 and no public speaking. So I'll just give a word about electronic voting. For any of items that require the panel to approve through a vote, I shall ask officers to activate the electronic voting, and thereafter I will announce the outcome. Please note that item 9, the vehicle fuel update and plan, has been withdrawn from the agenda. Okay, moving on to item number 1, which is the apologies for absence. I've had one apology, and that's from Councillor Curry. Are there any more apologies? That's a no. Okay, and item number 2, the declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? And that's a no. Okay, moving on to item number 3, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of April 2026. To approve the minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel meeting on the 21st of April 2026. A copy of these attached to the agenda pack, and everybody's, I presume, Councillor Austin?
I'd like to suggest an amendment to the minutes, please. On page 10, the bottom paragraph, a panel member expressed concern about the onerous demands made by KCC on the highways project. I think that panel member was me, and I wasn't concerned about KCC. I was concerned about the fact that there seems to be a difference in interpretation between KCC and TDC about what the requirements were, as a result of which we have postponed or cancelled the highways project to the great detriment of Ramsgate. So I'm wondering if we could perhaps reword that to reflect what I actually said.
Okay, so
shall I
suggest
the wording? Yeah. A panel member expressed concern about the differences of interpretation between KCC and TDC on the highways project, which have resulted in. Yeah, I can send it through later if that's helpful. Yeah.
Is everybody happy with that amendment? Do we all agree on that amendment? Okay, excellent. And do we all agree on the... sorry, can I have a proposer for the minutes? Councillor Green, and a seconder, Councillor Bright. And I need to all go to the vote. So if you all agree with the minutes, vote now. Okay, so that's carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 4, which is establishing the overview and scrutiny work panel programme for 26-27. Okay, this meeting is where the panel is going to set out the work programme for the new municipal year. If you look at section 3 in the report on this item, there's a number of activities which include cabinet member presentations and potential review topics. So just really want to look through month by month just to see what we've got lined up already with regards to cabinet member presentations. So we were going to have Councillor Whitehead this month. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it, so we put her back to June. Councillor Alban was going to be in June, and we now put him back to July because he was on holiday in June anyway. In June is our crime and disorder month, so I think we've got to have the Chief Inspector Ian Swallow. I think he's going to come along and do a presentation anyway, so I think June's pretty full. July looks pretty full at the moment. We're going to ask the Chief Exec to give us a discussion on local government reorganisation. Hopefully by then we should have, or we might know who July the 14th is our meeting. It has to be announced by July the 16th, I believe. Fingers crossed that it's done before that, and then the Chief Executive can give us his presentation on what the nomination or the options that have been agreed are. If not, we'll put it back to August if they haven't come in by then. So we're looking... Sorry, Chris.
Just to add to that, there is the potential complication. They could make a decision, but councillors may be aware in Sussex they've gone out to a further consultation to revise the options that were put forward as part of the initial proposal. It's a shorter time frame, but we could, in theory, have a decision in mid-July, that is, that we need to go out for another consultation on a revision to the proposals that were submitted. So hopefully we'll have it by then and they'll make a definitive decision. But as we've seen in Sussex, there's a chance there could be a further round of consultation.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so that's open to change at the moment for the July meeting, maybe put back to August. So what I need from you guys really is some ideas for cabinet presentations for August, September and October, and subjects really. we know who the cabinet members are. We've got Councillor Whitehead lined up. I've got Councillor Alban already lined up for 2. We've had Councillor Everett in recently. I'd like to get Councillor Bright in at some point, talk about... I'm not sure what his portfolio is now. Is it still on that one, is it? Okay. So we can ask Councillor Bright to come in after the summer, maybe for the October meeting, to talk about how tourism went in through the summer and talk about parking. So I'll put Councillor Bright down for October. Councillor Green.
What about the new boy on finance? It's supposed to be sticky, isn't it?
Councillor Scobie, yeah?
Yep.
When would you like... well, let's have a look. Because when do we start budget deliberations?
So we'll have the year-end outturn position internally. We'll be reviewing that in a couple of weeks' time, and we'd hope that that would go to Cabinet by the end of July. So that effectively sets the scene for next year's budget setting cycle. I also, members may recall, have set out that we will deliver a September report, budget setting report to council, looking at most notably the impact of LGR and what we need to do over the 18 months in the run-up to vesting day. So anything in and around that sort of late summer, early autumn period would work well.
Okay, so we'll look at September for that, shall we? Okay, and Councillor Davis, you got a suggestion for August?
Yes. Oh, that was already on as well. Amazing. We seem to be a bit skinny on feedback on regeneration, and given the lack of feedback we've had over the last couple of months and the vulnerability of the council to the impact of delivery of the rest of those regeneration projects, particularly the Pride in Place projects such as the Green Campus and so on, I think we really should have a thorough update on all of that. We're not getting it on other platforms either, so we're now about 3 months since we had anything substantial. So I think this panel's inappropriate.
Okay, so I pencil in Councillor Duckworth for August for a regeneration update.
Thank you.
Happy with that? Okay, and as I say, got Councillor Alban coming back in November to give us a review of the summer and December. So then we've got 6 months lined up then, something for December. I'm trying to, Councillor Keane, we haven't got anything down for her. Should we talk about PSPO or something like that? How the PSPO went? Councillor Austin?
Do we know when the poverty strategy is expected? Because I'm assuming that Councillor Keane will want to come and talk to us about that, and it will relate to some of the working party work, I would assume.
I think it's going to be in July, I think, from what I gather. Charles is not here, so he can't advise me. Penny?
I have put it down for the next meeting, so hopefully it will make it through for June, yes.
Councillor Manners?
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I'd be interested in open spaces coming in, finding out a bit more about what's going on with open spaces, tree planting, biodiversity work. December might be a good time to have a look at that. Then that gives us 2 or 3 months for additional tree planting if you know, to have a look at that idea.
So that's Councillor Alban, is it? Open spaces? We've already got him in November. I've got him down for 2 already this year already. I know, he doesn't love it. No, come on, we've got to spread it around. I'm going to pencil in Councillor Keane for December with the subject to be agreed. I think we need to make sure we get them all in some sort of order or spread out equally. Okay, 2 other things I'd want to just tie up, and that is your grant funding review that we did, Councillor Austin. Are you happy that's all okay now, or is there anything outstanding or pending with that? Can we tie that one up and strike it off the work programme?
I think it's pretty much tied up, yes, and we have another meeting of the Voluntary Sector Forum tomorrow, in fact.
Yeah, and that's going successfully. Councillor Davis?
Another issue that we should follow through on, because I'm not seeing a lot of scaffolding going up round Arlington yet, and a follow-up on the promises made would be good.
I've just had that discussion before the meeting. Things are happening, and I think we'd said we'd give them till, I think it was October, November, to see what progress, but things are happening. We might see some action pretty soon. But I think we did agree that we were going to give them 6 or 8 months, wasn't it? Yeah, let's just give them another couple of months because the things are happening, but let's just see where we are with that. And Councillor Pitcher, coming over to you. Congratulations on being the new mayor of Margate. And your tourism review, are we happy we strike that off? Anything outstanding with that now? Are we happy that gets
I don't
taken off?
think there's anything outstanding that I can think of. Yeah,
You
it
don't want to set that-
was a good 2-3 years ago now.
We don't want to set that toll up on the Thanet way, no.
Not for at least another year.
Yeah, so we'll take that off the work programme now. Okay, excellent.
Can I
Councillor Austin.
just point out that there was a welcome piece by the East Thanet MP about tourist taxes, advocating that councils need to be able to raise them in order to cope with the adverse effects of tourism, which I thought reflected very nicely what we recommended all that time ago and that was trashed at the time and we were told we were silly. So thank you very much, Ms Billington.
I'm frightened to mention it. I really am. Okay. Moving on to item number 5. Oh, sorry. So are we all okay with that? Do we need to do a vote? Oh, we're going to do a vote. To see we all agree with the work programme, just to keep you on your toes. Are you ready? It's not letting me vote either. I don't know what's going on. Okay, fingers on your buttons. All vote now. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 5, which is the air quality strategy. So I'll call on Penny to introduce that report.
Thank you very much, Chair. So you'll see before you tonight a report or a strategy for air quality within the Thanet district area. This is a strategy that we have to have, so it's something that we are required by law to have. I think it's worth noting that air quality in Thanet is actually very good. And whilst it is good, we still have some ongoing health considerations associated with air pollution, national targets, fine particulate matter, which is the stuff that we get when we burn, so combustion, and opportunities to align air quality improvements with climate change, with planning, transport and health priorities. So the document itself has 5 areas in which we are looking to have some action. And you'll see them from page, I don't know which one it is in the report, but it's page 17 of the actual document. It highlights the actions, the 5 actions that we intend to take, where we currently are and where we intend to be over the period of this strategy. I think it's worth noting that we won't get there straight away. Sorry, is that better? Thank you. We won't get there straight away. It has, there's costs to most of this, but it's working in partnership with KCC, with planning, also using the grants that we can get from central government to bring all of these items forward. I would welcome your feedback and comments and hope that you will look for it to be recommended by Cabinet for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Members, come to Councillor Bayford first.
It's logged you in on the other end.
Yeah, okay.
You're on.
It's not...
You're on.
Okay, fine. Yeah, Penny, thank you. I can't see any reference to my old favourite, coaches idling in car parks with their engines on continually, which I'm sure must affect air quality very much. Thank you.
So it wouldn't be an individual reference to that. It would be something we would look at as part of the anti-idling work. So it will be within there, but on a broader. Yeah.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Penny. It's good. I mean, it's good to hear that we're compliant on paper. There's a lot of concerns still, particularly in the Ramsgate area, about the fine particulate matter that's coming, and it has to be coming from Brett's. We have all got this sticky, fine silica dust. It covers vehicles, it covers stuff in the gardens. There are boats in the marina. In fact, I'm sure I've got colleagues that will. Could we please have a focus on how this is being monitored down there? Because there is no doubt that, and you know, the weather conditions affect how much of this lands on our vehicles. I'm currently gathering some to get it assessed. But this is and sometimes you can't see it in the air, but it's on all the surfaces and gritty, and it's just, you know, it needs checking, because this is what we can see, and it's the invisible particulate matter that's even worse. And silica, fine silica, is lethal.
Mike. That's working. Thank you, Chair. So just in response to that, Councillor Davis, as you know, Brett Aggregates have recently put in recently had an application for their screening plant on site. Part of the determination of that was based on a particulate or a dust survey, and the conclusion of that was that there wasn't any significant or any particular impact outside of the Brett site. It's worth saying that, of course, Ramsgate is a coastal environment. The aggregate that is dredged from the sea is very similar to the material that's on the beaches around Thanet, and it's important to make the distinction between sand that's blown by the wind from beaches
and aggregate and what might be blown from that artificial process to dredge from the sea and then process that aggregate on site. Certainly the survey work that's been done recently and the survey work that was done a few years ago didn't point to any concerns about that having an effect on the broader area outside of the port.
If I could just come back, I'd like the question, can we see these surveys, please, and who did them? Because if they're internal surveys, we're marking our own homework, and if they're surveys that are conducted by Brett's as part of their compliance, then that's them marking their own homework. And I do genuinely and fervently, and many of the population want to see an independent opinion on this, because I take on board Mike's point about being a seaside area. The miraculous thing is, having been born and raised in the same seaside area, i.e. 64 years, I know the difference between what's settling on all of our assets now and what we normally experience. So whilst we have global climate change, unless the entire process has altered in the last 5 years, I'm a Dutchman. So I do think we need independent assessment for peace of mind on this.
Okay, Councillor Manners.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm going to second what Councillor Davies has just said. I grew up in on boats in Ramsgate. I spent years in 1979 till about 82 washing boats for a living in Ramsgate, and I can assure you that there was nothing like the amount of fine silica type dust that you now get that covers boats and cars in the marina. So the idea that this is an ongoing, this is blowing in off the sea, I don't accept, or blowing in off the beaches, I don't accept that. The weather hasn't changed, the wind hasn't changed in the last 30, 40 years. The only thing that's changed is we've got an aggregates processing plant right in the middle of a densely populated area, and anybody that's downwind of it and parks their car or their boat will go out 12 hours later and find it covered in as Councillor Davis says, in a thick or a coat of quite sticky silica type residue. And the dangers of silicosis are quite well known. Even short exposure to heavy concentrations of silica dust is extremely dangerous. So I would like to find out more about who conducted this survey and to see the results of it, and if appropriate, to have a proper independent survey, because this is a public health issue. This isn't a small issue, a box-ticking exercise for clean air to hit some target. This is about people's lives in Ramsgate.
Okay, so before I go back to Mike, did you want to speak about Ramsgate as well? Yeah, Councillor Green.
You do have to be careful, though, because silica does blow off the top of waves, doesn't it? And so you have to be sure where this stuff is coming from. And I know people are perhaps a little anti-Brits, but we do have to follow the facts.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Birchington and my car's always got a brown film over it. I can't believe that's coming from Ramsgate. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Penny. I'm very impressed with this strategy. I think it looks great. What I'm concerned about is how we pull everything together across the council, but also with our neighbouring councils and with KCC to make the most of this. So highlighting concerns that colleagues have raised about Brett's. We've also got the possibility of Manston starting up again, and looking at River Oak's own figures, the impact on public health in Ramsgate would be disastrous. But not content with that, just in the meanwhile, we seem to have in July, we've just had it in our inboxes today, restrictions on the Thanet Way as a result of Fuel Fest. Fuel Fest is rolling back to the UK, bringing a day packed with high-octane excitement at Manston Airport. Immerse yourself in a vibrant celebration of car culture. Did we give permission for this? Do they need permission for this? Is this something we should be encouraging? It seems to me to be completely contrary to what we're trying to do. In the meanwhile, I'm pleased to see that we're managing to get some good responses on buses and improvements to bus services through the government funding that's come to KCC, and I hope that something positive will come out of that. 400 and something responses we've had, and I know Councillor Driver is busy talking to Stagecoach, probably even as we speak about services in Ramsgate. And dare I say again, the highway scheme in Ramsgate would have made it much more pedestrian friendly. It would have made it much easier for people to shop on foot, on bike, etc., 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 rather than taking their cars into town. We need to be thinking about all these things and pulling them together. And I'm impressed with what's there, but there's sort of implications around it that we really need to be pulling in to make sure that we make the most of it. Thank you.
I'll just bring Mike back in because I know I cut him off just then.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was just responding on the dust survey that happened recently. I think it was December time. So that was independent, and it was done in accordance with the requirements for those surveys. So our environmental health team specified those requirements, and the survey was done to that. And it looked at receptors on the port and nearby away from the port. So it was a robust survey. It's worth pointing out as well, I think, that Bretts haven't just recently started processing or handling aggregate at the port of Ramsgate. They first started doing that in 1998, so it's some time. We know that the amount of material they are moving now is more than it has been in previous years, but the survey considered that because it was at the time when they were importing roughly one ship worth a week rather than one ship every 2 to 3 weeks, which they've been doing previously. So that's the sort of difference. But yeah, that survey was independent and was done by a reputable consultant outside of the council.
Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Mike. I noticed, however, that you said that the parameters that they surveyed were provided by us. So, like any good consultation, you can actually set out the stall. Or I say good consultation, like so many consultations. I would point out that we haven't just started bringing this up. It's a good decade or more that some of us have been complaining about this. And whilst I will accept that you probably don't get an awful lot of impact down on the port, it's up over the top of the cliff and across the first 200 or 300 yards of the town that there is a swathe of it. And the community are not happy about it, but you know, I'm trying to raise it here and do something about it and get something positive dealt with. There is no doubt of what's going on there. As I say, it's we need some answers on this, and for the record, none of us have an issue with Bretts as a company. We support free enterprise and businesses, but if a company isn't acting in a way that's beneficial to our community, then we have to say so and take action.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Just to respond to that, Councillor Davis, the points at which the monitoring happened was exactly where you've just described. So they were up over the cliff around the Chatham Terrace, that area, along the cliff and along the Paragon. The specification for this, although the council, our environmental health officers inform that, it's based on legislation. So it's based on the requirements of the Environmental Protection Act and the acts that are relevant to that. So they based it on that. So I'm confident that the parameters of that were appropriate for its purpose.
Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Chair. I too are getting complaints from boat owners about the sand on the boats. You know, we don't know where it's coming from, but the piles, Brett's piles, have got significantly bigger. I believe the crushing or the crushing and grading started in January, and we weren't even aware of that until we met with the chief executive and had sent footage of those machines working, and those machines are sometimes working at 6 o'clock in the morning. So it would be quite useful to see the new lease agreements. I think I did request the hours of working because I thought Bretts weren't allowed to start until 8, but they are working sometimes as early as 6 in the morning. I've seen one lot of dampening down of the piles recently. That's the first time I've seen I've seen probably about 10 occasions when dampening down of piles has happened. On that site, there is no routine wheel washing. It's interesting that TH95 is downwind. We're mainly southeasterly, so the reader was this side of it, so the wind goes past, and it would be useful to have TH the other side, maybe on the harbour. I also think it would be useful to have one of these monitoring stations on Military Road, because when that tunnel's shut, those big heavy diesel vehicles are going past people sat in restaurants, and there's been complaints about pollution. They're going, 50 centimetres away from people sat in restaurants. So I too have concerns about the proper environmental controls are not taking place on that port. There is no wheel washing, and there should be, and there's no routine dampening down. And if there were, where does that water go to? If it's washing wheels on lorries, then it's cement that's being taken off of those wheels, and that should be captured somewhere and dealt with appropriately. So although I think this is really good, we have an area which is becoming increasingly more industrialised, and we have to toughen up on how we're monitoring what's going on at the port.
Councillor Manners.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mike. Could we get a copy of the specification for the environmental or the air survey, and a copy of the actual report itself? It would be quite interesting to see the scope and to know what was found. And the only time I've seen this amount of dust in the harbour and on boats was when the actual port was being constructed, I think back in 78 or 79, and we had hundreds of lorries running backwards and forwards full of aggregate to remove it from who knows where to who knows where. But when there were hundreds of lorries running backwards and forwards, then there was an issue back in the 70s with that. But before and after that, there was very, very little problem with aggregate being deposited or silica being deposited on boats in the marina, whereas now it's quite a significant issue. So something has changed, and I can't believe that it's coming. All of a sudden, the wind has changed and it's now coming in off the beach. So the only variable is that we've now got an aggregate processor just a couple of 100 metres away. So that's why I think we need to investigate this issue, make sure it's been properly investigated, and continue to keep a watching brief on it. Thank you.
Okay. I don't want to keep going on about the port because it is a Thanet-wide air quality strategy. So is there any other questions about the Councillor Crittenden?
I just want, sorry, this is about the port and Bretts, but on the actions, there is a section around industrial emissions, which is to continue to ensure all industrial emissions are regulated in accordance with environmental permitting regulations. And I'm just wondering whether or not this actually comes under that section within that, and perhaps should note that that is a particular concern for the Ramsgate councillors on that side, under that section on the actions.
We can make recommendations to Cabinet as part of this report. We can do that once everyone's had their comments, then we can make some recommendations if you want to add into that. We're fully entitled to do that. Anybody, Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Chair. I forgot to mention earlier that part of the difficulty that we face with regard to keeping a decent level of air quality is the increasing number of developments, new developments of housing, which are happening on greenfield sites with little or no public transport. And it is a concern that new planning legislation appears to be going to make that easier rather than more difficult. So just I think it's something that we obviously need to keep a watching brief on, because it's increasingly impossible for people to manage on some of our new developments without a car, and that shouldn't be the case. We should be planning those in such a way that that they're walkable, that they're cyclable, and that they have public transport. And I'm not seeing that with some of the new developments at all. Thank you.
Is that something we can pick up in the local plan section when we come to that? So can I just ask, Penny, when we come, all these monitoring stations around Thanet, are they movable? Can we move them around? And are they, I mean, I know the one in Birchington's fairly fixed in the square. Are some of them sort of mobile?
So we have different types of monitoring station. We have the one in Birchington, and there are others across the district which are very, very much in place and cannot be moved. We also use diffusion tube monitoring. They for particular particulates, and I can't remember which one diffusion tubes are for, but moving them doesn't actually achieve anything, because we keep them in the places where you're likely to get the most normally transport-related particulates. So it will be normally traffic lights, places where you get stationary vehicles or vehicles idling. You would want them in place for at least a year to be able to get enough information to be able to show whether it is or it isn't. So there is a lot of work that goes behind it. So yes, we can put more in, but at present our air quality doesn't suggest that we would need to, because things are improving, technology is improving, there's more electric vehicles, so those types of particulates are less.
Yeah, because that's what's happening in Birchington. I mean, the traffic hasn't lessened, but the air quality's got better. But I was just going to think, especially with the traffic the way it is down sort of Hayne Road, back of Sainsbury's down towards Hayne Road, maybe there's some monitoring need doing there with the constant stationary traffic that sits there all day long down there. And going back to the port, I mean, I don't want to keep talking about the port, but I mean, it is important, clearly. I mean, when you look at the monitoring stations, there is a big arc that goes around Ramsgate, sort of the Grange Road, London Road, sort of. There's an arc where there's lots of them, and then in the town there's just the one that sits down there on the harbour. Maybe we need one down in Queen Street or somewhere, or up on the top on Nelson Crescent or wherever, just to monitor things, because there is nothing there that there is doing any monitoring there anyway. Maybe we can add them in, or maybe we can make that recommendation to Cabinet. I don't know.
So in terms of the particulates talking about from the port, they're not the ones we're monitoring on these types of, no, it's a different setup, which is why we had the independent monitoring. So what we're looking at here is basically vehicle fumes, combustion fumes, yeah.
Councillor Green.
Just on a positive note, Chair, we're seeing an increasing number of trees in the area. And even KCC have planted trees, which is great.
And long may it continue. The more trees, the better. I think we're very poorly presented with trees. I know Barry's a big advocate of trees, aren't you, Barry? Okay, so we're going to go on to the recommendations. After the comments panel is asked to note the following recommendations that are going to go to Cabinet. So it's to adopt the Thanet District Council Air Quality Strategy 26 to 31 for launch on Clean Air Day on the 18th of June, and to set out how the Council will continue to improve and protect air quality across the district despite current compliance with national air quality objectives. So do we agree with those two recommendations? We do. We don't need to vote. I'm just saying, are we agreed to that? So, and any other recommendations you want to make?
Entrenched on this, I think we owe it to the people to perhaps have some monitoring in those areas that are more affected. Particularly the squares that sit behind the facade of Ramsgate along the cliff top. There is a band that are particularly affected, and that's where most of the people that talk to us are. So perhaps, maybe we could recommend to Cabinet that there is a long-term monitoring process there over a period of time, several months, so that it doesn't. And it allows for the variations. I noticed Mike said that the report was done in December previously, one of the wettest months of the year. It varies according to, obviously, how the weather has been, but this particulate matter is there wherever it is coming from. So I think by monitoring it and also having a stated methodology and public reporting on it, we can, if nothing else, set the public's mind and our own at rest that there isn't a widespread risk to health there. You have to remember that Thanet already has the highest instances of COPD in the country. We've had various, and there are various causes for that. Cyclohexanone was being dumped into our water supply for years. Nobody knew about it.
Okay, so just to simplify the recommendation.
So my recommendation would be to
should we
install a monitoring programme specific to the areas of Ramsgate that are reporting this, with methodology and report to be made public.
So basically, you'd like further monitoring at the port.
Yeah.
To simplify it.
And the environs. It's not so much on the port. It's the halo area around it that it affects.
Councillor Green.
I think the results are showing that there is silicon dust, but it's not coming from Brett's. Now, we're in danger of being Canute-like and thinking we can stop silica being distributed from the sea here. I mean, I really don't think we've got any justification for it.
That may be true. All I'm asking is what Councillor Davis's recommendation will be, and then we can vote on that. And if that's taken to Cabinet, then it'll be Cabinet to decide whether they want to put that forward. So, any further recommendations?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to clarify, I think what Councillor Davis was saying, as Penny has said, that the TDC's current monitoring doesn't cover the machinery, or doesn't cover silicate particles. So I think we need some sort of specialist monitoring specifically for silicate particles near at locations around the port. So that's one certain recommendation that I'd like to make, the Cabinet consider having monitoring stations around the port, because that is a legitimate public concern. And I appreciate what Councillor Green has just said, but my personal experience, and as I said, I grew up washing boats in Ramsgate Marina. There wasn't pocket money back in the 70s. That's how you earned your pocket money. And there was nothing like the amount of silica dust that we're seeing today. So, where's it coming from? And the answer, if there are question marks that it's possibly coming from the aggregate processing at the port, then that needs to be investigated. So that's why I'd make a very strong recommendation that we have silica monitoring, and also that the results and the methodology of the existing report that Mike Cumbers referred to, that be made public. So that's the two recommendations, please.
Okay, so so the recommendation is for further monitoring at the port and the results to be made public. Yeah? Okay, so have I got a seconder for that? That you're obviously proposing it and you're seconding it, yeah? Councillor Manners? Yeah. Okay, and do we all agree on that recommendation? Can we have a show of hands then? Who's in favour? Sorry, are we going to do it on the pad? Oh, okay, sorry, we're going to go electronic. Hold on, are we ready?
It's difficult, Chair. Chair, it's difficult because I agree with one of those and not the other.
I think it would be a good idea, and I think the report is already in the public domain. I believe it was attached to a Cabinet report months back, if I'm correct. There was a dust report that was done on the port. I think it would be a good idea, I sort of agree with Councillor Green, where getting hold of that report would be a good first step, because we need to see what's in that report before we can recommend anything else, if anything else is needed. Okay, so two recommendations. One is to look at further monitoring at the port, and the second one is to see share the document. Okay. Should we just go with that for now? Well, no, we're going to vote on it. So we're going to go with the first recommendation, which is... Sure.
The only point I want to make is that the detritus, silica dust, whatever it is that we're referring to is there. Whether it comes from Brett's or not, it is there. So that's what we're after monitoring and finding the source of. If it proved not to be Brett's, then bloody great for them. I mean, you know, however, at this point, the fingers do seem to point that way. But I'd like to make it quite clear that we're responding to a very real situation, not hypothetical things. So we are after that monitoring to protect the public wherever this comes from.
Yep.
Okay, so the first recommendation is for further monitoring at the port. Okay, so are we ready to vote, Nick? So that recommended. There is only 10, so 9 voted in favour, so I think it's majority carried anyway. Yeah. Well, we'll try with the second recommendation. So we're going to go with the second recommendation is to for the results of the survey to be made public. And we're going to vote now, yeah? Are you ready? No boxes.
Just to be clear, if you've got a green box, that's yes. Red box is no. Yeah, it hasn't come up yet. I don't want to tell you, otherwise I'll use up all your time to vote. So the vote will be, if you agree with the recommendation, press the green button. If you don't agree with the recommendation, press the red button. If you wish to abstain, press the yellow button. Okay? So.
Okay, so that's unanimous. So I will put those recommendations through to Cabinet, and whether Cabinet agree with them, that's a different matter. Okay, so that's done. Thank you, guys. So moving on to, is that right? Okay, perfect. Moving on to item 6, which is the Spitfire Way Vehicle Workshop Project. So I'll call on Mike to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides an update on the project to establish a new vehicle maintenance workshop at Spitfire Way in Manston. The report also describes a recommendation to Cabinet on the 2nd of June 2026, next month, to make a key decision to undertake works at Spitfire Way to make the facilities ready for service. The Council's fleet of 113 vehicles, which includes 41 heavy goods vehicles, is currently maintained at Manston Road Depot. And now those vehicles are used to deliver our waste collection, recycling, street cleansing service, all those things. However, the existing workshop at Manston Road is no longer fit for purpose. It's an ageing facility that is too small for the modern vehicles and does not meet current standards. To ensure we can continue to operate our fleet efficiently and safely, we need to develop a modern workshop facility. Some option scoping work was done last year, and that's set out in Table 1 of the report. The option to identify an alternative workshop site was deemed to be the most appropriate way forward. In November last year, November 2025, a decision was made to secure a lease for the site at Spitfire Way in Manston, which offers the space and facilities that the council needs. So this report describes the key decision that would be required to proceed with the necessary refurbishment and modernisation of the Spitfire Way building. The project has a total estimated value of £1.31 million. These works will transform the site into a fully operational modern workshop, allowing our teams to maintain our fleet of in-house vehicles, and it will support compliance with our heavy goods vehicle operators licence. There's a £1 million budget for this project that already exists, but on its own that's not sufficient to complete the works. So the report therefore also proposes a budget virement. Now this involves moving £525,000 from the Manston Road infrastructure project budget. This funding is available because that project is forecast to underspend by a similar amount to that. By reallocating these existing funds, we can address the urgent need at Spitfire Way without seeking an entirely new capital budget for the project. It's my view that the recommendations in this report are the most cost-effective and practical way forward to deliver a modern and compliant workshop. It will allow us to vacate the existing life-expired workshop at Manston Road and move into a modern workspace that promotes the safety for our workshop staff and maximises the ability to maintain our vehicles, which in turn supports the delivery of our cleansing service and all the things that the cleansing team do. So thank you, and I'm happy to take questions on that.
Okay, members, the recommendations are in front of you. I'll take Councillor Manners first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mike. £1.3 million seems like, well, it is a lot of money. It's a lot of taxpayers' money to be spending as we head into local government reorganisation, when we don't know whether any new depot will be redundant or duplicated elsewhere. So I think the first question is, what consultation have we had with other neighbouring local authorities to ensure that there's at least the outline of a plan to make sure that once we do have local government reorganisation, that this isn't just money down the drain. There's no information about the length or the term of the lease. So for what's the minimum term that taxpayers are going to be on the hook for a lease that could potentially be a vacant plot in a couple of years' time? What are the alternate uses for that? I mean, what are we going to do with it? It's just going to be another piece of land that's going to cost money for security and guarding and all the other things that we often hear about with TDC assets. That's another concern. There's no information, and I'd welcome a lot more information on what procurement procedures took place to identify possible outsourcing for this work, particularly given that it may be an interim measure. We're not talking about solving a permanent problem here. If we're going into reorganisation, this could be solved by outsourcing. So has there been a full procurement process for that? I mean, we do like to outsource things at TDC, and I often speak up when I think we could do them better ourselves. But when it comes to vehicle repairs, I don't think there's anyone in this chamber that doesn't outsource the repair of their cars and vans and other vehicles. But you take them to the garage, and there's plenty of businesses in East Kent that are very geared up to cope with a fleet of 100 vehicles. Is not huge. There are more vehicles parked on my street than Thanet operates within its fleet. So that's an issue there. And I'm a bit concerned that reading the report, it seems that we've already agreed this lease. I mean, have we just painted ourselves into a corner, and are we now being told that it's a done deal, so you better agree to it? So what how much are we on the hook for here in terms of, have we signed a lease? Have we signed, what would the costs of withdrawal from this and reconsideration be? Because that's going to have a material impact upon any recommendations we can make to Cabinet if we're going to be told that we've already spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on a project that hasn't really had proper scrutiny to date. So that's the list of my issues. I'll leave it with you, Mike.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll try and address those as best I can. So, yes, you're right. It's £1.3 million, so it is quite a significant amount to spend. It's a lot less than if we wanted to develop our own workshop on the site, and a lot less disruptive. In terms of LGR, the point at which we are along the LGR process, the conversations about what the waste service might look like haven't happened yet. So when we know what the unitary looks like, and we know that our neighbours, one of our neighbours has an arm's length management organisation that runs their waste service. One of them is contracted out. Like many things through LGR, there will be a long period of harmonisation after vesting day, and waste in particular is one of those things that the work that will go into that hasn't started yet. We have a problem now. We have a compliance issue now. We've got just under 2 years to go, I know, until vesting day, but that's 2 years that we can't tolerate this issue. So we have no option to do nothing. We have to do something. And this, when you look at the option analysis in the report, in table 1 of the report, is the most appropriate way forward. Procurement procedures for the outsourcing, there hasn't been a procurement procedure. What there's been is research by our transport manager, by a transport professional, into the possibility of outsourcing. Outsourcing for that scale is actually very difficult. It's a large, substantial number to outsource that locally. There isn't anyone locally that will provide that service now. And if they did, that doesn't actually solve the problem, because we are an operator license holder. We have an operator license with the Traffic Commissioner. What that means is that we are responsible for our fleet. We would end up having to monitor anyone externally very closely, and it wouldn't be efficient. It's much more efficient if we own our fleet and operate our fleet, that we maintain our fleet. That's been the operating method for many years, for decades. In terms of, is this a done deal? Well, yes, the land transaction, the transaction on the lease, has been done. That was agreed in November. There is an agreement for lease in place. There's some complexity to the way the lease works, because there's services works that the landlord needs to do and is doing, and there's a sort of binding agreement, an agreement for lease in place currently, and the lease will be signed upon completion of those servicing those service works, so providing electricity, providing water and gas. But yeah, this decision is about the key decision to do the works. It isn't a decision about the lease agreement, because in your words, is it a done deal? Yes, the agreement for lease is in place, so that has happened already. I think that's the end of your list, but tell me if I've missed anything.
Thank you for that. Yeah, if I could just come back on a couple of points. I mean, I have to say it again. What you're saying is we don't know what's going to happen with local government reorganisation, and so we can't plan for it. But it does seem that extraordinary to me that potentially we're spending 1.3 million as a fixed cost that has to be amortised over perhaps only 2 years, because we don't know what's going to happen in 2 years' time, and that's a huge amount of money to that's what, 60,000 pounds a month or something. It's a huge amount. So also, is there a report that's been a proper report on the actual current facilities at Manston, and whether that could be repurposed in some way? I mean, I'm not saying it hasn't, but could we know what we've got at Manston, what resource we've currently got? How is there another way to repurpose that to perhaps with some limited outsourcing? I mean, there is an element perhaps of make, do and mend that I've suggested before in council as we head towards LGR, because I don't see the point in spending money that may be in the skip in 2 years' time. And if you could just come back to me, how much have we actually spent? How much money are we into this on already before it's gone to cabinet? And what is the proposed term or minimum term and commitment for us as the leaseholder on the proposed lease? So just a couple of points there. Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned about the 2 years date, and of course vesting day is just under 2 years away. My view is waste is one of the things that's going to take a long time to harmonise. There are long-term contractual commitments across Kent. We're a waste collection authority. KCC currently are the waste disposal authority. They have contract commitments that are very long-term in terms of where that waste goes. We have a different arrangement to Canterbury. We have a different arrangement to Dover. We don't actually know if that's the unitary is going to be the 3 yet. We don't know that. We won't know that until a few months' time. My view is that on vesting day, there will still be those arrangements in place, and it will take quite some time, along with all sorts of other services, to harmonise. So I think it'll be much more than 2 years before we're in a position where we might be offering our, running our waste service in a different way. In terms of the existing facility, the existing building up at Manston Road Depot, it is at the end of its life. There isn't I completely with you on make, do, amend. We're pretty good at that, and we do a pretty good job of repurposing and of making the best of facilities that we've got. But it's got some significant compliance problems. It is essentially too small to handle the vehicles and the scale of our operation, and that's one of the things that we have to do as a vehicle operator, is make sure that we can risk assess and say that that's a safe operation. That's one of the reasons why we need to move, along with the fact that building is simply life expired. There are issues with it that we can't overcome. It would be cheaper to knock it down and rebuild it. It's better still to move to this site because that's cheaper than that.
I'm going to let Chris come in because he's going to give us perspective.
Thank you, Chair. So there's a couple of points I want to make. Firstly, in terms of the amortisation, we would always depreciate an asset over the life of the asset. We wouldn't link that to LGR, so there's no concern there in terms of having to write that off over 2 years. If in the scenario, the situation where we found out this facility was no longer needed, we would sell it at that point of time, and there would be an accounting potentially loss if it's sold for less than the amount of money, or the lease is terminated, with a penalty involved. What I really want to bring into focus here, though, is when we talk about LGR, I think there's a risk that we keep thinking it's just a merging of district functions. That's not the case. What we're taking on is upper tier functions, and quite a lot of upper tier functions aren't located in this part of the county. If you look at the highways depot in East Kent, that's in Ashford. I'm very confident that in any scenario, we're going to need some Port of Highways depot facility in this part of the new unitary boundary. I can't say that for certain. I don't even know if we'll be with Ashford. That's just one of the options on there. If there isn't, we're going to need a brand new highways facility to deal with that in this part of Kent. So there's lots of things to overcome. Mr. Humber has rightly said the depot is at the end of its life, and if there is no do nothing option. We have to do something, and the financial potential risks associated with do nothing are significant in terms of potential fines. Mike talked about the traffic commissioner coming in. There could be cessation to services, and the impact that would have on residents would be really, really significant. So this is a capital investment. It'll be spread over the life of the asset, which I believe will be 50 years. I'd need to double check that, maybe shorter depending on the term of the lease, but that's typically how we apply that to building facilities. But I think it's really important not to just think about this as a waste facilities asset, because a new unitary is going to have a much broader range of functions that could be applied across all of the services that it provides.
Around a little bit. Let me just spread it around a bit, because I don't want it to be the council manor show. We'll come back to you. Yeah, so is everybody else. Councillor Manners, we'll come back. I'll just spread it around at Councillor Bayford.
Thanks, Chair. I see Councillor Manners' point about LGR, but this applies to so many services. As far as I can see, 2 years is still quite a long time, and I think we have to provide an efficient service to our residents and also a safe service for our operators. So, personally, I think this is a good decision. Thank you.
Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I see this as a really good news thing. I think we're really lucky, actually, that this workshop has become available. It says very clearly in the report that this offers the most economical solution. Our waste service is so important. It's the thing that I get the most complaints about from residents. It's so important that it's operational, and we need a workshop to make sure that our fleet's operational. And it's not just 2 years. We need to make sure that we're future-proofing it. So I think I don't actually see this as a difficult decision. I think it's really good. Thank you.
Councillor Green.
Yeah, I'm all in favour of providing good facilities that work for our staff. I think that's taken as read. But I am concerned about this lease. Probably articulated better by the councillor in front of me. But I did go through the paperwork that led to the signing of this lease, which I understand you nodded through, Chair. There's not a lot of information there, not even on the cost of it. And certainly no information on the terms of the lease. So I think investing this sort of money without seeing the lease that it's based on is not a good thing to do.
And you're absolutely right. It did come before me as an urgent decision, and it's not something I signed off straight away. I'd questioned it, and leader of my group, I spoke to him about it, and he will confirm that I didn't just roll over and just sign it off because I was asked to do it. Ingrid came to me and she said it's fine, it's all been looked at, it's legal, it's fine. And I said I still wasn't happy about it. And then the chief executive said to me, look, it's fine, because
Did you see the lease, Chair?
Of course I didn't, no, because that's not something I would be involved in. But I was asked to sign off the decision, and I was made 100% that it was fine by legal and by the chief executive. So yeah, that's as far as it went with me. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I think the shared concern of a number of us is based on previous experiences with emergency decisions. And that's what concerns us, because it can't have been that urgent, because the decision was taken 6 months ago and we're still turning on electric and putting water in, which actually makes me question why it's such a good opportunity if the services weren't in place, and why is it necessary for the landlord to take 6 months to reconnect them if it was things don't make sense about that. The other thing that I personally don't understand, and it's the bane of this country, leasehold premises affecting businesses and their profitability. Why, when we own the freehold of the Manston Road depot, are we spending 1.3 million refurbishing someone else's building? Because I'm amazed that we can't provide a big workshop and shed on our own land that we own and is an asset to this council. We're selling off stuff like mad to patch up holes in the budget, whilst chucking 1.3 million into someone else's building effectively. And I quite accept the need for resilience and better facilities, and I very much look forward to reorganisation when there is a single point authority with accountability for the services. We will need additional facilities come that, and as Mr Blundell said, absolutely spot on. It just flies in the face of common sense to me to sign up. How long is the lease on this, which again we keep asking? Councillor Green's highlighted the fact that it's extremely sparse, the information we have, and add to that the situation with bog-off barges springs to mind, millions being spent on berths that have never had a vessel berth on them. You know, we seem to be going down this same Python-esque route of chucking money at something and hoping it works. If it's urgent, let's get it done. Because what's been happening in the last 6 months with these vehicles, if they don't fit in the building up at Manston Road, I mean, I recall we had a discussion about allocating money to restore the facilities at Manston Road, which are apparently non-compliant and in need of refurbishment. Is the money that we're talking about viring here coming out of that? Is another question I have. In which case, then, yeah. But as I say, it makes no sense to me to enter into a liability when we hold an asset that surely that same level of investment would improve our bottom line and balance sheet. That's normal commercial logic. Then the other one thing I would like clarified, because the report does contradict itself, on page 82 we talk about an agreement to lease, which again smacks to me of when we talked about heads of agreement on the Pleasure Armour site years ago, and some people thought that that meant it was a done deal, which it wasn't. So do we have a lease? Because on the following page it then says that it's anticipated to be formally signed in June upon completion of the service connection works. Are we in a lease or are we not? Because if we're not, there may be room to manoeuvre and just pin down the negotiation.
So we just get that confirmed, Mr. Humber. So I think you said an agreement to sign the lease, wasn't it? And could you just confirm how long that lease will be?
Yes, yeah, certainly. So I think I covered this a minute ago, which is that there is an agreement for lease that is in place. And this is a fairly standard property method of acquiring a site through leasehold. There's an agreement for lease based on conditions, though one of those, or the primary thing, is the connection of services. This site was formerly supplied from the Manston Airport site, so the services came from there. The current owner is offering the site for lease. We now have a contractual agreement, so we have that agreement for lease, which is binding, in place. And when they have completed the servicing work, the services works, which will be independent from the airfield site, so they'll be, they're from the roadside. When we've got that, that's at the point at which the lease is executed. So this report does say that. It says there's an agreement for lease in place and the lease agreement will follow.
So does that answer your questions about the lease?
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thank you, Mike. If there's an agreement for lease and that we're therefore committed to sign a lease, we must have agreed heads of terms of the lease. So we should know the length of the lease. We should know our minimum term that we have to pay the money for this lease, and we should know the terms for assigning it or disposing of it. So could we, and this is particularly relevant because if we having local government reorganisation, okay, maybe 2 years is nowhere near the length of time, but maybe is it 4 years, is it 5 years? But are we going to be on the hook for a 25-year lease here or a 15-year lease? I think it's a fair question to ask, to know what the minimum term that taxpayers are going to have to pay the rent for this site. We also I don't know what the procurement process was for this site, whether other alternate sites were looked at. If we've got to spend £1.3 million on it to make it fit for purpose, I assume we've got our own plant and machinery, so we're talking about sheds and services, are we not? Was this the only site that was available in East Kent that was of a suitable size and with access and utilities? What was the procurement process? Because I don't think we knew anything of that. And that's that sort of informs me a little bit here, that I'm concerned that we've been corralled a little bit into this, and it's just been presented as a slam dunk. Well, we're on the hook for it now, just tell Cabinet to get on with it, and £1.3 million goes out. That worries me. So that's hence the reason for asking the questions that I'm asking. Thank you.
If I just come back. So there wasn't a procurement process. This is a property transaction. So it's a lease. It's not. It doesn't run through the procurement regs and those things. Yes, there are heads of terms. There is a draft lease because we're at that advanced stage now. This coming back to this report is about the key decision to do the works. The decision to enter into the lease has already been made. There was an urgent decision made in November last year, and that's the link to that is here in the report. I don't propose to go into the details of the lease now in terms of the term, the break clauses, and those sort of things, or the financial side of that lease. I think that's something that perhaps that's something that the panel may want to make recommendations about, but we haven't signed that lease yet. And I think that's something that we would need to consider how that information is shared, but I don't think it's right to share that information here in a public meeting.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on the comparator in terms of investing in Manston Road and as opposed to the site. And I can understand why it may be considered that is more savvy investment and it's you investing your own asset. I think what we need to be mindful here, I would suggest is considered, is this is a very distinct, bespoke, unique asset. If you invest in a depot in Thanet, no one's going to. That's not going to raise the value of it. No one's buying that off you. There's not a market out there really to buy a depot. It's very different to investing in office accommodation. This building here, if we made a comparable £1.3 million investment in this building, I think that's great because realistically it would increase the rental that we might get. We might be able to sell it on for office use. If we invested in a depot, great, it will provide the service functionality that we need, but it's not going to improve the market value of it. No one's going to pay more money for that realistically because who's going to buy in Thanet a depot of that scale? There's not a commercial operator that would be interested in it.
Margate.
Thank you. So in the report, the current depot is described as, quote, not economically viable to refurbish and modernise. Do we have any sort of ballpark figure, just out of interest, ballpark figure of how much it would have cost, just so we can compare it to the 1.3 million?
Thank you, Councillor Britcher. Myself and Ms Hummer have discussed this and Mike may want to elaborate on this. A very, very basic investment that doesn't get us anywhere near the level of facilities that we're getting at Spitfire, you're talking 3 million minimum. So to get something comparable to Spitfire, I think we'll be looking at 5 million and north of that. So in terms, appreciate this is a lease and it's a 10-year lease rather than an asset that we own. But in terms of direct investment that's needed now, it's of a much lower level.
Chair, can I?
Yes, Mr. Hubber.
If I could, because I completely agree with Chris, but just to elaborate on that, the Spitfire Way building, its former use was as an HGV fire appliance base, so it was for the maintenance of those fire appliances and their operational site. You won't find a better option in terms of something for us to modify and update. And it's not I know it's a lot of money, but it's not a great deal of modification to make it suitable for our use. And just coming back to a previous question about what else we considered an options, we did look at another site, and it was a site that the council owns in Pysons Road as an option. And that was before we were aware of this as an opportunity. And that site was harder to modify in a far less convenient location and would have cost more ultimately to do. When this came along, this is one of those things where we get good timing and a little bit of good luck that this site came along at the time when we needed it, because it is absolutely ideal for our purposes. it will make a very, very good workshop facility. It's got good stores location. It's got good supporting office location. It's got plenty of space outside it. It's a convenient location when compared with the depot. It's only a couple of miles away and it's out of town. It's on the way to and from the tipping site. A lot of things add up to make this a very good option for us.
Thank you. I just add to that as well, from financially, the location is beneficial when we've been looking at, in terms of the routes the vehicle will have to make, that will cut down on fuel and all those types of things. But also the bits we were trying to unpick earlier around local government reorganisation, the location is beneficial, the fact that it's on the edge of our district and close to the Canterbury. So from that perspective, Canenco, the Canterbury company, maybe have some interest in operating out there, as opposed to if we were investing something that was in the heart of the district, would be less flexible.
I'm going to come to Councillor Crittenden and Councillor Wing and then back to you, Councillor Manners.
Thank you. Yes, I'm looking at the table 1 on page 81, which does seem to succinctly summarise most of what we've been discussing. And one of the things I particularly noted, and I'm thank you to Mr Blundell for the confirmation of the different costs and everything else. But the option, and I'm sad to lose the fact that we're doing this work on our own land, because I do agree with Councillor Manners on that point. But it does say that the programme for delivery, despite it being probably 3-4 times as much in actual cost, would be another 2 to 3 years, which would be put us back into the option of the risks of doing nothing, which would be that we'd be facing health and safety, legal and reputation risks by not actually making this move, because we'd have 2 to 3 years of running illegal, if you like, as I'm reading it in a simplistic way. So I think my view is that, yes, there are things that niggle and that are not great, but at the end of the day, this does look like the right option in this situation. And I am inclined to completely agree with what has been said about the location of the new site. We're not going to be driving vehicles up to Maidstone or over to Ashford or wherever for maintenance. We're going to want them locally. We've got that many vehicles. It would be completely uneconomical to be using another site elsewhere within the new unitary, which is not likely to include Maidstone. I shouldn't have said that one, thankfully. But there are going to be depots around, I would imagine, because it's just simply not economical for us to all be using one depot. The size of the land is just going to be too big for having hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of vehicles from different districts all trying to meet up in one central point. So overall, I'm quite happy to agree with this. Thank you.
And I'm sure our Green councillors are going to agree with that, Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mike. I think I'm quite unhappy that the lease was agreed and none of us knew about it. So I'll just say that point. It doesn't fit in well with the monitoring officers' project arrangements that come up. It leaves us wide open to conspiracy theories, and I'm sure there isn't any here, but it does. And I agree with quite a lot of what's been said, but I wanted to focus on, we know we've got a budget issue within our cleansing department, and we're seeing it and feeling it out on the street. The street bins are not being emptied. There's no money to buy new street bins that have disappeared or been set alight. So I'm worried about that. There's obviously going to be an annual cost for this to lease this building. Obviously you can't give me the figures because that's commercial sensitivity, but how is that going to impact further on the 800 on reducing the 800,000 deficit? That's one concern I have, because we could find that we have less street bins emptied, that rounds get bigger, but I don't want to see this building impacting on the quality of service that residents are seeing, because residents are quite unhappy with the service at this present moment in time. I have to say, a lot of them, well, the ones that have had changes. And the other thing I wanted to ask a question on was, we know we need to improve the Manston site, and I think we all agree that our workforce need the highest quality of facility possible, particularly if they're out 10 hours a day in horrendous conditions collecting our waste. You know, that is really important that those guys, those people in our workforce come back to dry, safe, high quality facilities. Does this impact, does the money that we're taking from there, is it going to reduce the improvement in the facilities at our own depot? That is, so there's two questions really. How is this going to impact on our current situation, our overspend in waste, because we definitely don't want to see any further reduction in our services? And how may this impact on the quality of improvement of provisions at our existing Manston Road depot?
What I will say is that urgent decision would have been publicised, and I'm pretty sure that an email went out to everybody. If you look back through your emails in December last year, around that sort of time, and it's been on the forward plan for a fair few months with that urgent decision on there as well. So it is transparent.
But it clearly isn't an urgent decision, is it? My understanding of an urgent decision is something catastrophic, like the roof's been ripped off this building in a storm, and we need to do something about it immediately. That's an emergency decision. That was my understanding of. Okay, we can split hairs all night, but.
Thank you. Just on that urgency point, by the way, and the report does mention this, we had sort of a very good idea that we weren't the only ones who were interested in this site. The urgency was about us securing it. If we had lost that opportunity, we'd be looking at one of these other options on the list, and it would have cost the council more, taken longer, we'd have been exposed to more risk. So we were very clear that it was important to secure this site for all those reasons. I think this, this opportunity, this project, is about being able to sustain and continue to deliver cleansing services reliably. And I understand the point you're making about, we're now leasing. We've now got lease costs. As I say, I don't want to go into those figures, but I know that we have negotiated a very good deal on the financial side of that lease, and certainly one that I think is good. It's worth saying that our existing facilities, they have cost and continue to cost money to keep running, which we won't have to do that when we've got this new facility. So it's not just a case of this is additional cost. Running a vehicle fleet of over 100 vehicles with 41 of those as HGVs is an expensive business. It costs a lot of money. This, having modern facilities, will allow us to do it efficiently and reduce some of those costs where we're dealing with compliance issues very regularly, which is investing in things that aren't going to last very long because you're putting money into a building that is at the end of its life. So I think my view is that this will actually help us to run an efficient service that delivers what we need to deliver out around the district.
I'm not sure my finance questions were answered, because my main concern is that we've now got an additional cost. We are going to have additional costs. I accept that there'll be some offsets, but what are we going to do if that 800,000 increases again because we've now got a new facility with a regular lease a payment made? Are we going to further cut services for residents? Because that's not something I can really sit here and say I'm going to enjoy or residents are going to enjoy, because like we all know, it is the one thing. It's a number one priority for our residents, their waste collection, and I don't go out at the moment. You get hit all the time with uncollected bins. So it is really important that we don't further allow this additional cost to encroach upon services.
Mr. Blundell will put your mind at ease, I'm sure.
I'll try my best. I think it's important that we look at these as two distinct issues, in terms of we've got a decision here that requires us to consider whether investment should go ahead at the site that a lease has been acquired. And as the report sets out, there are some other options that have been considered, and Cabinet could recommend that officers go away and look at further options. That's not directly linked to the situation we've got with the operation of the service at the moment. So the service, is, as you rightly sort of referenced, was an overspend, and it's still to be determined. We're in the position of finalising the year-end position. In the region monitoring, we're showing £800,000. That was largely due to sickness absence rates and the consequent reliance on agency, rather than the maintenance and compliance costs that are needed. There will be some costs that will hit revenue as we write off this expenditure or charge it through to revenue budgets, but that's spread over the life of the asset. And as Mike's rightly said, there will be some commensurate or offsetting savings that will help fund some of that. We are already working really hard to try and bring those sickness levels down. I think that's the really core thing that we need to look at in terms of having a structurally balanced, sustainable revenue budget for that service, rather than the investment that's needed. I think the one thing we probably could shine a bit more light on is the risk, the financial risk of not doing this. So we've talked about the role of the Transport Commissioner, coming and looking at this, and the reputational risks. But fines could be involved. There could be, as you know, the shutting down of service. What, from my experience in dealing with health and safety, is when agencies in this like come involved, what they like to see is you have a plan to address an issue. So even if an issue exists, if an organisation has a plan to address it, they tend to look at it far more favourably than if you have an issue and you've not actually got a plan in place to address it. So by not dealing with this, it would leave us at risk, I would say, to the relevant agencies coming down and saying, we can't operate from that depot. We have a statutory responsibility to provide that service. I couldn't actually tell you realistically. We'd be looking at significant sums, because it would be urgent, emergency outsourcing of our repairs function and maintenance function of our fleet, and we'd have no negotiation or leverage there, and we would be effectively held to ransom by the private sector in order to do that. So although this is expense, the alternative of not doing it would be far more expensive, in my opinion.
Councillor Green.
Yep. We don't know very much about the lease, as you know, Chair, because you signed it off. Well, you did. You signed a decision without consulting, as far as I know. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sure you did with them, but not with any of the people here. Anyway, we know some things about it. We know it's more than £250,000 in cost, because otherwise you wouldn't have been asked to approve it. We don't know who the freeholder is. We don't know the terms of the lease. And I think it is absolutely essential that Cabinet knows those things before they approve this.
So I'll say it through the microphone. We'll come to that as a recommendation shortly. Councillor Austin, sorry, I forgot you.
Imagine forgetting me, Chair. Disgraceful. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Bright that this is generally good news, and that we have turned a situation that was worrying about the state of the Manston Road depot, which I've visited relatively recently, and I agree it's not fit for purpose, and definitely not somewhere that our staff should be having to come back to at the end of a long shift, into something positive. Mr. Blundell's points are well made about the location of the facility and the potential for other extended uses under local government reorganisation, which has reassured me on those points. I still am worried about the fact that 6 months ago, you as chair were asked to agree to prevent call-ins on this decision, and it's somewhere in some forward plan. I'm not aware of having seen it. And all this time, we've been talking about the importance of transparency, and we've talked about turning over a new leaf. And I remember in my early days on the council, I was spending my whole time saying, hello, councillors need to know about this. Hello, councillors need to know about this. And that has massively improved. And I'm uncomfortable about the long period of time. And I've attended every cabinet meeting that it's not been discussed. It may be on a forward plan somewhere, but I think perhaps this should have been flagged up to the majority of councillors earlier, and certainly to scrutiny earlier. That's all. Thank you.
I wasn't comfortable about it myself. You know, when it came to me, I didn't just do it and just sign it off straight away. It's just, I took advice, and I spoke to the leader of my group, and then I spoke to the chief executive, and I spoke to Ingrid, and everybody assured me that it was fine. And if legal say it's fine, then I'm happy it's fine. Yeah. Councillor Manners.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Austin on this, that there are I've got misgivings on the governance side of this, the same as Councillor Austin. It does remind me a little bit of the when we were outsourcing the property management to Mears, that we were told, well, you know, we have to approve it because there's no other option, and we haven't got time to get a plan B together. And I feel that we have been painted into a corner slightly with this, that you know, it's a done deal, essentially. So I think I'd like to make a recommendation for Cabinet, if I may. Just on a couple of housekeeping issues. I mean, on a light-hearted way, Mike, I would say, as I used to own estate agents, and when it comes to telling people there are lots of other people interested, we always say that. It's in the training manual on page 1. But we are where we are. If I could suggest, though, to Cabinet that we ensure that within this lease that we have the ability to certainly to assign it at any point without penalty, and ideally to have a release clause where we can be out of it completely. I would suggest 5 years. That would seem a reasonable period of time, taking into account local government reorganisation. I don't know how far down the line we are with the nitty gritty within the heads of terms, but if the ability to assign the lease at any point without penalty were in there, then at least we have a get out of jail free. Well, we have an option to dispose of that lease if it's surplus to requirements within 3, 4, 5 or 6 years' time. And otherwise, the option to terminate the lease, as I say, at I would hope 5 years. So that would be my recommendation to Cabinet. Thank you.
Councillor Austin.
I've just been having a look at forward plan listings, and what it says is relatively recently it pops up as Spitfire Way Vehicle Depot. It doesn't tell us anything about it. It's just a listing. So I don't think that fulfills what I would regard as required under transparency. Not over a period of 6 months. Sorry.
That's a fair comment. Okay, so are there any more comments before we go to these recommendations? Quick one.
Just wanted to highlight the fact that we're told that I do think people have fallen for the old double glazing close. You know, the price wasn't going to go up 50% the following day. However, if this is a bespoke building, and I see the appeal for vehicle management and use, yeah. But if there are other people genuinely interested and on the hook, they would be operating in a level, so there should be operators that would be able to service 100 vehicles. We had more than that when Allied Bakeries had a plant bakery locally, and we 5 mechanics serviced 120 vehicles, including about 87.5 tonners. So, you know, this isn't rocket science. What I would say is, as I say, who was looking at it, ultimately, there would be people in the same sector because of the nature of the building. So either there isn't anybody, we know Pfizer's had thousands of vehicles and had them all serviced down at Sandwich by a couple of contractors. So I'm afraid it doesn't wash with me that the facilities aren't there. They are there in East Kent, and there's plenty of mechanical. I come from that background myself. However, we're going to need to move forward with this, I guess. But I think one of the lessons learned that we can take forward is let's have some information, because once again, this is all, and given the history of disasters of the past, like the bog-off barges, etc., you know, we're sitting here feeling very uncomfortable because we're just spending money being told you've got to do it. Not what we're here for.
Okay, so the recommendations are that are in front of you. I'll read them out. We're asked to note that recommendation 1 is to approve the key decision to award a contract via a competitive open process for the delivery of a Spitfire way vehicle workshop project with a construction value of circa 980,000 and a total estimated project value of 1.31 million. And recommendation 2 is to approve the virement of 525,000 from the Manston Infrastructure Project used to fund the Manston Road Environmental Compliance Project to the Cleansing Service Building Works Project, which has been allocated for works at the Spitfire Way workshop site. So recommendation 3 is that terms of the lease be revealed to Cabinet. Is that's your recommendation, Councillor Green?
Yeah, I have a question. The 1.3 million, does that include the cost of the lease? Does it include the cost of the lease?
Sorry, Councillor, no. So the 1.3 million is capital cost for the work, so it doesn't include the revenue costs of rent. It doesn't include that.
So can I have a proposer for the terms of lease to be revealed to Cabinet? You're proposing that? And do I have a seconder for that? Seconder, and do we all agree on that one? Do we need to do a vote on that? We're going electronic. Fingers on buttons. We'll vote now. Eight, 4 and 2 abstain, so that's carried. And we're going to go for recommendation 4, which is what Councillor Manners has proposed. To have a seconder for that, which is a 5-year release clause without penalty. That's your recommendation to ask Cabinet to ask for, yeah?
5-year release clause without penalty, and also the ability to assign the lease at any time.
Okay, so have a seconder for that. Okay, so we're all going to vote on that one now. Away you go. Okay, that's done. So that's 6 in favour, 2 abstain and 2 against. So that's carried. And I'd like to propose a recommendation that all future urgent decisions are shared with all group leaders. So I propose that, and it's seconded by Councillor Austin. So can we vote on that one? Recommendation 5. And vote now. Okay, and that's all 10 in favour of that recommendation, so that's carried. So we'll send those off to Cabinet. Okay. Oh, Councillor Austin.
Chair, could I just make the point that the recommendation that we made about the details of the lease being shared with Cabinet should not need to be a recommendation, that Cabinet have the right to know, they are the Cabinet, they have the right to know these things. It feels like a retrograde step for us even to have to recommend it, but I'm pleased that we have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. Okay, thanks, Mr Humber. And this is what scrutiny is about. It's a big project. It's been well and truly scrutinised. Okay, moving on to item number 7, policy for civil penalties under the Renters' Right Act 2025 and other housing legislation. And I call on Penny. No. Ashley. Ashley, sorry. No, it has been changed. And I've just, yeah.
Yeah, so it's me. And I've got Lauren from the team here. I know, yeah. Okay, this report recommends the adoption of the new civil penalty policy to comply with the statutory duties imposed by the Renters' Rights Act 2025 from the 1st of May 2026. The Council is under statutory duty to reconsider issuing civil penalties for housing-related breaches and offences. The new Renters' Rights Act 2025 significantly strengthens the ability to protect tenants' rights with key provisions like the ban on no-fault Section 21 evictions. So key impacts from the Renters' Right Act 2025, abolish Section 21 no-fault evictions, introduce a wide range of new tenancy-related breaches and offences, introduce a new civil penalties of up to £40,000 for unlawful evictions and harassment as an alternative to prosecution. Sorry. Mine's a bit floppy. mandates the creation of a private rented sector database and a new private rented sector landlord ombudsman, requires the application of the Decent Home Standard to the private rented sector, and mandates the Council to enforce the new landlord legislation and report to the Secretary of State on these functions. The Council proposes to adopt the model civil penalty policy published by the Association of Chief Environmental Health Officers. The reason that we're choosing this policy is it is identical to the one promoted by the Justice for Tenants and is expected to be used by at least 210 local housing authorities nationally, including 11 of the 13 local housing authorities in Kent. This alignment will ensure consistency in the enforcement and support successful outcomes at appeals. The model policy is deemed compliant with the new statutory guidance issued by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, and developing a unique policy for Thanet would delay the Council's ability to enforce the Renters' Right Act 2025. So the recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Panel are that we recommend to Cabinet that the adoption of the proposed policy for civil penalties under the Renters' Right Act 2025 and other housing legislation, and recommend that Cabinet delegates authority to the Head of Housing and Planning in consultation with the Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder for Housing to approve additions and amendments to the policy. Thank you.
Members, I'll come to Councillor Bayford and then to Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think it's essential that we have a a similar policy to other authorities. I mean, although the Act is clearly there to protect renters, I think we have to protect our landlords as well. And I don't think that there should be disparity between different areas. I think it should be fair and just across the whole country. Therefore, I think that to have a policy that is in line with everybody else is the right one.
Councillor Green.
Yeah, I agree with that. Having areas competing with each other would not be a good thing. But let's cheer this. I mean, this is wonderful news, isn't it? If this Labour government does nothing else, then this legislation is great for our people.
Councillor Austin.
Yes, I thoroughly agree. It's excellent to see this. It's really good legislation. It's great that we're part of something that Justice for Tenants has supported, and that we've developed a consistent way of working with other authorities. So all for it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. Definitely in favour of this. It's good to see that there's a whole section on HMOs as well. The bane of our life. Some of them, the good ones are okay, but the bad ones are really bad. So hopefully that'll help us sort them out.
Councillor Davis.
Just one observation, like all legislation, it's only effective if it's enforced effectively. So this will be a test of our enforcement and making sure that we actually follow through on things. So I do welcome the fact that we've got a parallel set of policies with other councils so that there is a level playing field. And then hopefully enforcement will have no reason not to robustly enforce where necessary. Because looking at the penalties in this, that's enough to make one or two of our landlords sit up next weekend and perhaps read their headlines. So yes, all for it, so long as it's applied properly and on those landlords that deserve it, not just on the ones that happen to fall through the net where they're not quite compliant. So
all very positive, actually.
Can I just come back on that?
Yeah,
so I just wanted to say that we received new burdens funding for this Renters Reform Act, and we've actually had a person in post working on this, so an enforcement officer already in post since about we had a landlord event in here where we launched it, and she's been in post since March, and we are actually one of the only authorities in Kent with an officer in post already. A lot are kind of waiting for the impact to hit, but we've hit the ground running and are really leading the way in it. She's spot on. Yeah.
In which case, Chair, if I may, I'm going to blow everyone's mind and say fabulous and really well done for getting ahead of the game there. No, that's what's needed here, I believe, because there's a lot of fear around this legislation, both from tenants and landlords. And with those that have taken good advice and drilled into it, it's not as horrendous as people think. And I think we'll actually be a lot fairer on people, ultimately. So, but well done for that, because it is about that. I know we go for education rather than the big stick, but however we term it, enforcement is vital. There's no point in having all the rules under the sun if you don't enforce them. So.
The Renters' Rights Act and the statutory guidance are really, the government has really changed their tact. So previously, our team are used to following the regulators' codes to trying to assist and informally resolve issues. However, the landlord's legislation and the statutory guidance basically says that there is no reason, or the council does not have to go through the informal measures, and where an offence or breach, we have enough evidence, then we have a duty to enforce, be it financial penalty or prosecution. So the government have really changed the way in which the council operates.
Councillor Manners.
Thank you. Yeah, as a landlord myself and many of my friends, some of my best friends are landlords, talking to a lot of landlords, they're leaving the market, they're selling up because they are afraid of this legislation. Whether that's justified or not is a moot point, but speak to any estate agent in Thanet and there are record numbers of former buy-to-let properties coming onto the sale market. And funnily enough, they're selling very quickly to first-time buyers, so maybe there's a shift in the market. But we are seeing fewer, we will, I suspect, see significantly fewer rental properties on the market. So I hope this legislation will be applied pragmatically, that we're not going to just look to nick as many landlords as possible, because very often they're not the enemy. Any landlord with more than 50 or 60% loan-to-value mortgage is in effect subsidising the rent of a tenant at the moment, because they're spending more on mortgage interest, maintenance and fees than they're receiving in rent. So they're not the evil people that the media would sometimes portray them as. We do have a process with civil enforcement of education before enforcement, and I get that we've got to ensure that landlords comply with all current legislation, but I would just suggest and pray that for the sake of tenants themselves, because we want tenants to have choice of rental property, that the council is going to take a lighter touch and be pragmatic where there's an error of omission rather than commission, if you can see what I'm saying there, where there's not a deliberate breach by a landlord, where it's an oversight that's easily remedied, that we take practical steps to support landlords through this. Because otherwise, if we lose more landlords out the market, rents will significantly increase, and we'll see more homeless people. And we already know that what an effect that has on our budget. We can't afford to have more homeless people, and it's private landlords who are doing the heavy lifting in terms of housing people in Thanet, far more so than our social housing programme. So that's the message there, is support for landlords, not just enforcement, please.
I don't think you were in the room when we talked about, we've had a launch event of this for many landlords. I think we had about 50 landlords come. It was all very positive. Yeah, and we have landlord forums every quarter as well. We've actually got really good relationships with landlords. We like working with landlords. Like you say, there's not enough social housing to house everybody in Thanet, so we have to work with landlords. We have, Let's Talk Housing events where we talk with landlords. So we have got good relationships with good landlords, and it's good landlords that we want to work with. So, we will only go after the landlords who aren't following the correct rules set out by the government. They're not our rules, and we're not out to kind of persecute anyone, but we will follow our statutory. That's. Lauren, do you want to come in?
Sorry. And a lot goes on before we come to this policy. So, we will have to investigate. We will have to reach the evidence thresholds. Then we do the public interest test. So it's not just, we do a lot more than just, and then we have to go through the policy. And there are mitigating and aggravating factors. So, for example, if a landlord comes to us and says, these are the circumstances, we can then apply a downward proportion. Or, for example, if an HMO is hazardous, then we can increase it if we feel that there needs to be a more significant penalty. So it is proportional, have a look. There are different circumstances, and we always come across new things all the time. But we do obviously have the evidential public interest, and then we apply the policy. Thank you.
Just one point to note, we're not making a decision tonight, we're not voting on anything, but if you're declaring yourself as a landlord and you're making a vote on the renters' right, I think you need to make that as a declaration of interest going forward. Is a bit of a conflict of interest. Yeah, I suppose so. Okay, just point to note. Councillor Wing.
It's some clarity really on the HMO. So we have, I sit on planning, we have a HMO, we have a building in our ward that that went through planning to be a HMO but has never applied for the licence. How would that one be enforced?
So it really depends if it's a mandatory HMO. So in Thanet, we don't license discretionary HMOs, so we do mandatory only. So that's 5 or more people, 2 or more households. So it depends if it meets that. Are you aware if it does meet that threshold? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, so the recommendations are in front of you, and we're asked to note those, and we all agree on those, to note those? Just say noted. Okay, moving on. Item number 8, the local plan commencement and scoping consult. Sorry, thank you, Ashley. And Lauren. Okay, moving on. Local plan commencement and scoping consultation. I'll call on Adrian Verrill to introduce the report.
Oh, okay. There you go. I'm now officially Penny. Yes, so thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to set out the first steps in preparing a local plan under the new plan making system and to seek members' approval for the following. To publish a local plan timetable that replaces what you will recall as being the local development scheme that we used to prepare. To publish a notice of intention to commence local plan preparation and to commence the scoping consultation for the draft plan. So this report summarises the early key stages in the new system. The proposed local plan timetable is set out paragraph 3.3 of the report. This provides a timetable through to the adoption of the plan following independent examination. At this stage, the Council needs to carry out a scoping consultation at which we will invite representations on matters including what the plan should contain and how future engagement on the plan should be carried out. It's not the purpose of this consultation, not at this stage, to set out the Council's vision, aims and objectives through the plan. This is really about getting other people's views. It is intended, though, to publish a consultation document that sets out the new planning process and will indicate the range of topics that local plans usually address, to provide some context, really, for people who are commenting on this consultation. We can also publish up-to-date studies as background information. It's also the intention to run a new call for sites and to publish the Strategic Environmental Assessment Scoping Report for comment. Members will note in the report that there are 2 possible consultation periods for the scoping consultation. This reflects the need to respond to emerging government guidance and other technical matters, and we're trying to, where as far as possible, avoid the summer holidays. Whichever period we go for doesn't affect us entering Gateway 1 at the end of October, which we need to do. It is probable, though, that the consultation will begin towards the end of August, so that second consultation window, and it will be for a period of 6 weeks. The government have made it clear they wish local plan preparation to continue, regardless of local government reorganisation. It's also in the Council's interest to proceed with preparing a plan so that we can set out our vision for the area and what we think is important for Thanet in the longer term. I'm happy to answer any questions members may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Members, anything? Councillor Ring.
Thank you, Paul. Adrian, sorry. I was thinking about housing numbers. Well, it would have been Penny. Will our housing numbers increase? And is there any scope for us to challenge the present housing numbers? Because we all know there's a ridiculous formula that's used to give us houses we don't probably need, just to try and reduce the price of housing. And it really worries me that there's a new call for sites, because we know there's been areas like Cliffs End where there's been housing applications being sort of scoped by local developers. And we're really worried that we're going to be losing more farmland because we haven't got really brownfield sites.
Yeah, there has been a standard method for housing numbers for many years now, and the starting point is that local authorities should seek to meet that if they can. There is provision in the guidance to look at to what extent a council area can accommodate that figure, but the government starting point is you should meet your own. If you cannot, for whatever reason, then you have to enter discussions with your neighbouring authorities. In this case, they will be authorities who may be part of the same authority in a couple of years' time. So there's obviously a slight tension there, if you like. So yes, but the reason we're rerunning the call for sites is because we've been told by the planning inspectorate that we cannot carry forward work done previously under the old system. So the two previous calls for site that we did in 21 were done under the old system, so we're essentially going to be writing to the same people and asking them, do you want to continue to promote your site or not? But obviously it will give other people an opportunity to bring forward other sites if they have them.
Sorry, so if a site comes forward that was previously not allocated for housing, will we have to accept that for housing?
No, when people put forward the sites, they'll go through a site selection process. They have to meet certain criteria. The government are producing some templates for that work, and we are looking to commission some additional work to feed into that. So just because people put them forward doesn't mean we're going to support them. What we have to look at is whether we've got enough sites to meet the requirement. But obviously, we'll come back to members with this in a lot more detail further down the road. But yes, that's basically the position. Yes.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Adrian. I've read a couple of presentations from you, and I'm starting to understand this. But I want to follow on what Councillor Wing said about the numbers, because unfortunately we had a change of government, because the previous government had said they were going to do away with the 5-year land requirement and revise the standard formula, because this one clearly doesn't work. I mean, I remember in 2015 we seemed to launch, and we went, not 2015, 2019, and we ended up, whether we were, I don't know if we were penalised for not having a plan, but we ended up going from 12,500 to 19,000, I think it was. Within no time at all. We do seem to be disadvantaged, particularly by that formula. I don't think we've got a very good chance ever of having a proper 5-year supply, because of the fact that we have this peninsular effect and there ain't no more land. So consequently, what can we recommend that the council do? This is my question, is what can we recommend that the council do to push back really robustly, given we have unique circumstances? And a lot of people have compared us to the West Country and the peninsular effect, but you can't, because we're on a tiny peninsula, where obviously the Devon and Cornwall peninsulas spread out and big. There ain't no more space. So how can we continue to push back on this? Because otherwise we're just going to get swamped, and none of us have agreed to being in the concrete jungle of Thanet, that's for sure.
Yeah, so the standard method's been around for quite a while, as I said. I know the previous government did talk about changing it. It didn't change quite as much as we'd anticipated. So, but there is now a new standard method, which is based on housing stock rather than population. So one of the pieces of work we've got at the moment is looking at trying to identify what the actual population need is and what the needs of the population are in terms of affordability, accessibility, household size, and also that sort of thing. And we will obviously be looking at deliverability as well. We've been producing, we monitor housing completions each year, and we are also subject to the housing delivery test. So we are currently revising our housing delivery test action plan. So this is a lot of stuff that we will be looking at, and we'll be reporting it to members as that progresses.
Adrian, so we're at 17,000 now in the current plan that we have. So where do you see it going, the numbers?
Well, just about to recalculate. The figures change slightly twice a year, because one is based on the change in the housing stock and one is based on the affordability ratio, and we are due to get another figure in July. At the moment, the figure is 1129 per annum. So whatever plan period you select, it's that number of years times that figure. They're quite sizable figures.
So 20 years, we're talking 23,000 then, yeah?
Yes, they're quite big figures. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, any further comments or questions? Oh, Councillor Austin, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Adrian. What you just said about the new way of calculating sounds more promising. I'm worried about the 23,000, but I mean, if we end up with more and more and more, 5-bedroom houses Airbnb'd on greenfield sites, then it's not helping us with our actual housing need. Whereas if we're looking a bit more closely at what the housing need is and how much we're meeting it, hopefully that will be better. Is that your view?
Not necessarily. For the last local plan, we did similar work. We worked with housing colleagues to try and understand what the affordability issues were. We had work carried out that looked at the changing population and what the housing needs were in terms of house size, and what needs we had in terms of dwelling accessibility. So we will be doing that again. It's quite difficult to compare the two because the previous standard methodology was based on population and this one is not. It's based on stock, so it's not directly comparable, I'd say.
Councillor Green, sorry.
Yeah, the Isle of Wight seems to handle their housing supply numbers quite well. I don't know how they do it, but my question was about water. Are you looking at the problems of water supply to the area in the local plan?
I mean, technically, that is the responsibility of other organisations. However, one of the things we did last time, and we will do again this time, is to look at what's called an infrastructure delivery plan. So what we will be looking at is trying to understand what the infrastructure needs are that are driven by the housing numbers. So we will do that again. What we generally do is when we know what the top number is, if you like, we contact all the infrastructure providers and ask them what service improvements would be required. And then at a later stage, when we think we know what sites we're going to propose, we go to them again and say, if it's this set of sites, what are the infrastructure needs? How are they going to be produced? We try to input to the water resource management plans and to other and to transport plans as well. So there is a bit of two-way there. So we do try and take it into account into how we plan for the numbers.
Are we all done? Of course you can.
It's just an observation on, I think Thanet, the island as a whole, is not just only being hit by an expansion of housing, but also of big infrastructure. I'm talking about the Minster Marshes, which is a massive piece of, if it gets the go-ahead, and something else which will negatively impact not just residents but the environment. Will the local plan take a holistic view around all the development that's happening across the Isle and not just housing? Because the cumulative impact of some of this stuff, there's been multiple applications that have been approved down at Richborough, battery plants, largest battery plant in the country is now there. All all having a pull on water resources, for one, and our road network, which is crumbling. Nobody will be able to get here, so nobody will be able to buy a house. So I'm just wondering whether the local plan will also take a holistic view of all development and our infrastructure across the board.
Well, what we'll do is go to those infrastructure providers and ask them to consider the local plan numbers in the context of everything else that's happening. So when the water resources management plan is prepared, they try to get hold of the housing numbers, proposed employment land and other proposals from the local authority, but they'll obviously know, of course, about the other things that have been consented or completed or in operation. So that's the way we go about that.
Are we all done? It is concerning. I don't know how long it's going to take to get through Westwood with 23,000 houses, but there we go. Okay, so the recommendations are in front of us. So number one is the local plan timetable under Regulation 8 of Town and Country Planning, Local Planning England, Regulations 2026. To publish the notice of intention to commence local plan preparation, Regulation 19 of the same regulations, and Recommendation 3, the scope and consultation for the draft local plan, Regulation 20 of the same regulations. So we're asked to note those. Noted. Okay, moving on, item 9 has been withdrawn. So moving on to item 10, the one you've all been waiting for, Dreamland. So I have invited Dreamland along tonight. I did go down there with a personal invite 6 or 8 weeks ago. I then spent 2 days putting this email together, to be very polite, to invite them tonight. Yeah, because it took me 2 days to be polite, yeah. And I hope they're watching. I got a one-line answer back saying they're not coming. Because I was asked how I'm going to create a dialogue by Councillor Green last time, but I'm done. What more can I do? So introducing the report. Ashley.
So Bob can't make it today, so I'm presenting it for Bob. So this report concerning the scenic railway at Dreamland was also considered by Cabinet on the 30th of April. The report responds to the petition regarding Dreamland's decision to cease to operate the scenic railway, which was debated at full council on March 26th and referred to Cabinet. The petition reflects the extent of public concern and Dreamland's decision, and I know that concern is also shared by members of the council. Section 5 of the report sets out the actions that the council has and can take in response to the specific requests set out in the petition. In particular, the Cabinet has agreed that the council will arrange an annual inspection of the scenic railway to ensure that Dreamland maintains the structure in reasonable repair. Officers, along with the leader of the council, have also met with Historic England to discuss the scenic railway. It was a positive meeting and we agreed to continue to work together and to try to seek a joint meeting with Dreamland. We've also contacted National Lottery Heritage Fund seeking a meeting, but are yet to receive a detailed response. We will also be contacting the Health and Safety Executive to ask if they are able to share any of the advice in relation to ride health and safety. One of the key issues considered in the report is what power the council has to require the operation of the ride. The full legal advice is appended and the report concludes as follows. The council does not have any statutory power to compel the operation of the scenic railway. The council cannot require the owner to disclose technical, financial or commercial documents unless this forms part of a live planning or enforcement process. The council's statutory responsibilities relate to the preservation of the listed structure, not its operation as a ride. Finally, the report also considers whether the sale of Dreamland to Sands Heritage should have included a requirement to operate the scenic railway, and the relevant advice is set out in section 4.3 of the report. As you know, the chair of this panel has invited Dreamland to attend the meeting, and it is disappointing that they have not engaged with that. We are seeking to work with Dreamland and other agencies involved to help secure a sustainable future for the scenic railway. Thank you.
So the recommendation is that the Overview and Scrutiny Panel is asked to consider whether it would like to carry out a short review in relation to this matter or to take further action in view that the fact that Cabinet has already considered the matter and made a commitment to the annual inspections. Members, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. As the man that traipsed all over that place with you, I can confirm how hard work to deliver that letter and to get a one-line dismissal probably sums up what we're dealing with here. Oh, no, but you did get a one-line answer to the follow-up. I think what's really important, there's been a lot of reference, and Ashley highlights the fact that we have no power to make them operate it, and this is where the debate, I think, has dragged on and went a bit off course at one point. None of us are trying to demand that they operate it, but it must be maintained in the condition it's listed in. So I very much welcome that Cabinet decision to inspect it. I'm not sure annual. I think it should be every 6 months. You saw the amount of green algae growth and mould where the wood hasn't been treated and maintained, and historically that was painted, the framework of it, because we've now looked up and got the evidence of that. That's a breach. They're not, you know, yeah, they've rebuilt it, they've not, and it's deteriorating as we speak. So my question is, when's the first inspection? How soon can we do it? And can we make sure that this debacle doesn't slide any further? It's quite clear what these people's position is. The other thing I'd like to point out, by the way, that they went to licensing and requested a vast number of more events per year, and the claim in that licensing application was to provide the funding to maintain this ride, amongst others, and to make it more viable. Well, they're getting their numbers, but it seems the ride isn't getting its. So I question the veracity and accuracy of anything these people say, and I think we should be riding it hard, excuse my pun, but sitting on this very, very hard, inspecting that ride and enforcing it. And if they don't want to look after it, then hand it over to someone who does. Because whether or not they operate it, yeah, we don't have that. But there's, I've mentioned before, there's the spirit of an agreement, and there seems to be no goodwill or spirit coming back whatsoever. So, as I say, I welcome the inspection, but could we please do it a little more often and ensure that it's inspected by people that know what they're looking at and are prepared to follow through on the enforcement, please.
Councillor Manners.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ashley. A couple of things. On 4.3, it's obvious that the reason that we couldn't put any covenants on or conditions on the sale was not because it was legally impossible to do so, but because it was commercially not possible to do so, because according to 4.3, we're saying that to insist that the purchaser of Dreamland continue to operate the ride would make it commercially unviable. Well, that's exactly what's happened. So, you know, what did we expect? We've admitted, essentially, that to take over Dreamland, the scenic railway was perhaps not a commercially viable proposition. But we are where we are. Obviously, it makes sense that we use all of our statutory powers with heritage conservation to ensure that the structure is maintained, and let's hope that Sands Heritage will find a way of repurposing the ride so that it's still a part of the Margate landscape and still a tourist draw, even if it's not going to be in operation as a roller coaster. But I think my recommendation to Cabinet here would be to try to engage positively with Sands Heritage. It's a large employer in Margate. It's responsible for a very considerable number of visitors to Margate. When you look at their summer season of concerts, it's perhaps, after our beaches, the biggest single draw to Thanet. And what we should be doing is ensuring that they're operating and they have every bit of support that they can from us to operate as a successful and responsible business. But perhaps, well, I'm suggesting that Cabinet do invite Sands Heritage to sit down with them and see what more we can be doing to support their business, because they bring a hell of a lot of money into the district, and it's the visitor economy. I don't think we can underestimate how important that is, and Dreamland is the biggest part of it in Margate by a long measure. So that would be my recommendation to Cabinet, to try to engage constructively with Sands Heritage. Yeah, that's really it. I mean, and impress upon them to find a way to repurpose the ride that's going to be in everyone's benefit. Thanks.
Yeah, we're not here to make a recommendation to Cabinet. It's been to Cabinet. I think they've made their decision what they're going to do. I think Ashley said they are going to continue to try and create a dialogue. I don't believe there is going to be a dialogue. They are going to have to come to us at some point if they're going to repurpose that ride or reimagine it, as they're trying to say. Maybe we can treat them to one-line emails in response to that when they come to us. But there we go. Councillor Davis.
I'd like to suggest a one-liner which says it's a roller coaster. It looks like one, smells like one, probably is one. You know, whether they operate it, not entirely their choice, but it's a listed asset. Is it grade 2 or 2-star even? 2-star listed, which gives it even more importance that it's maintained in the correct, yeah? And we've been lied to. There's the word. We were lied to. Oh, this much-loved old wood has reached the end of its life. What, after 6 years? It's probably reached the end of its life if it was taken off the beach at Ramsgate when that ship dumped its load, but that's about, which was about the same time frame. No, I think we have to be robust, and yeah, I'm very pleased that they're taking the money they are off of our visitors and providing a facility, but we've provided that facility with or without Live Nation. You know, they may run a monopolistic business elsewhere, but I think Thanet has its own attractions, and we don't need to be vassaled and cap in hand to people that can't even do the job that they've promised to do in the first place.
Anybody else? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Ashley. I'm just looking at the recommendations in the petition document, which include note that a meeting between the leader of the council, council officers and representatives from Historic England is scheduled for the 6th of May to discuss the scenic railway. Do we have any information from that meeting? Thank you.
So I've got a note of what was discussed. So discuss the powers that may be available to the council and Historic England in relation to the scenic railway, and HE advised that the listed status protects the structure of the scenic railway but not its function. The council has obtained its own legal advice which reached the same conclusion. It would be helpful if Dreamland could be more open with the information that they hold about the condition of the scenic railway, and also share the advice that they have received from the Health and Safety Executive. Historic England agreed to raise this with Eddie directly, with the aim of encouraging them to share the information they hold. And we agreed to contact the Health and Safety Executive to ask their view. We agreed that we should work more closely on this, and that a joint meeting with TDC, Historic England and Dreamland would be a good idea. And the meeting would be helpful to discuss the wider site, including the cinema, the park, the scenic railway and the adjacent land. I wasn't at the meeting, but that's what Bob's...
Thank you. It feels to me, from what we've seen of the various meetings that have happened, I understand there was a meeting with the National Lottery Heritage Fund held by Dreamland way back, probably best part of a year ago, and then meetings with officers here, and then meetings with Historic England and whatever. And it just feels like it's trickling on, but nothing substantive is changing. Is that a realistic assumption?
I don't know about the lottery meetings. I haven't been advised about them, but the Historic England ones, I know that Bob will continue to pursue them, just to see if there's anything we can do. I mean, I think the important thing is to get the health and safety information from Eddie that we wanted, which informs the decision to close it. That's the most important thing.
So, do we want to carry out a short review, or do we want to just put this to bed as far as we are concerned? That's what I'm asking you.
I think we need to follow through on it, but perhaps given time to allow the leader and Historic England and Ashley and that to hopefully bring some pressure to bear on these people, but I don't think we should just leave it and forget about it. We owe it to the people to follow through on this and see what is going on. So my recommendation would be to revisit it in 4 months, say, or 3 or 4 months' time.
Okay, so we'll...
Unless anything obviously transpires in the...
Okay, so your recommendation is to let it lie, keep it on the work programme, revisit in, say, shall we say July or August? August, okay. Everybody agreed with that? Oh, do we have to vote? Do we have to do it electronically? Or electronically? Let's go for it, because Nick wants to use his system. Yeah, second it? Okay, so we're going to go for a vote on whether that we want to revisit it in August. So we had 8 for and 2 against. So we'll add that back to the work programme, and we'll just sit on it for a couple of months, see how they get on, see if there's any further meetings. But as far as I think we're at the end of the road as far as we can be, as far as scrutiny for now. Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay. Moving on to, thanks, Ashley. Moving on to item 11, which is the forward plan and exempt cabinet reports list. So unless there's something from the plan that the panel wish to consider, members are asked to note that report. Thank you. And that concludes the business for tonight's meeting. I declare this meeting closed at 9:32. Thank you, and the live stream will now end.